Did you know you can grow your email list as a podcast guest? Instead of borrowing someone else's audience, why not focus on growing your own? Take your listeners from curious to connected with a private podcast reader magnet. Want to try one out? Mine is called Listeners to Readers, and in just 6 short episodes, you'll learn how a private podcast can grow your email list and market your book. Grab it for free at listenerstoreaders.com. Ever wish you could just let other people talk about your book instead of you marketing it by yourself? What if you could have someone come alongside you to cheer you on and help share your message in a whole new way? Well, today you're going to hear about a really cool strategy that my friend Lori Melton did to serve her target readers. Lori is the host of the Sanctuary Stirrings podcast and author of her first book, Journey with a Giant. Choose your guide, pursue your purpose, and grow in your walk with God. Lori is sharing how hosting a podcast helped her attract her traditional publisher and the super fun podcast series she hosted alongside a co-host for her book launch, and how God worked through that in bigger ways than she ever could have imagined. You're in for a treat today, so let's get to it. Hey, Lori, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm so thrilled to have you on the show today.
I'm so excited to be here. I've been listening to Book Marketing Mania for a few years now. It's been a part of my journey. So love that I get to talk today with you. And
yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're so sweet with your feedback when I send out emails or, have episodes. I really do appreciate that because I just love hearing, what resonates and what doesn't, so that we can do a better job. So yeah, thank you so much, Lori. Well, I'm super excited, of course, with it being Book Marketing Mania to talk about your new book, Journey with a Giant, and really dive into how you're using your podcast to market your book, because I think there's a lot of authors that they're trying to build a platform or they're trying to market a book and they kind of separate it. And I know you do a great job of kind of combining the two. And so I want to ask you first off, because you are with a large traditional publisher. And I know one of the things you mentioned to me was just the fact that you were able to attract them being a podcaster, but in your mind, you don't have a very big platform. When you hear some of the platform numbers we should have, obviously you have the right size platform for what God wants to do with it. But we just talk about that because I know a lot of our listeners are, new to writing, or they're about to release their first book like you just did, and they would like to do the traditional publishing route if they're just in the writing stages. So let's talk about how that process kind of went down with you.
Yeah, it was so good because I was never really active on social media. And that, that kept coming up when you would be at conferences and talking to writers, like you have to have all these followers. And I'm like, I don't know that that's ever going to happen. So I'm just going to be myself and I'm going to work in the lane. I was on social media. I had about 700 Facebook followers and less than 150 Instagram. But what I did find out about myself and what I did enjoy was I love podcasts. I love listening to them. I never thought I would be a podcaster myself because I thought it would take all this time away from writing. But as I learned about it and learned how simple it could be, I was like, I think I might try that just with my newsletter. I'll just start making that into audio content first because I love podcasts. So I can speak to other people who love podcasts. So I started a podcast of my own, maybe a year and a half before I actually started pitching my book. And then when I actually had to write my marketing plan for my book, what I found that I focused on was I had 2 ideas, or I had 3. I had my own podcast and a blog that went with that on my website. And I wanted to do a podcast series about my book before it came out. And I was super excited about it. It wasn't anything anybody had to talk me into. And then third, as I learned about podcasts and about myself as a person, I'm most comfortable in small circles of people. Like when I can talk in front of bigger groups, it's a lot of effort for me. It's very stressful for me. But to talk in a circle, like I love leading small groups. I love having coffee dates. So to me, I thought, what does excite me is going on a podcast tour where I could find other podcasts that I could share on their podcast about something that would benefit their audience. And that would help me get introduced to their audiences, and I wouldn't have to leave home. Like the energy that it takes to go on a speaking tour compared to a podcast tour, there's no
Uh-huh.
comparison. And the people that you can reach. So, yeah.
So let's back up to just hosting. Like whenever you were
Hmm.
presenting your book idea to your publisher, did you say you already started Sanctuary
Yes.
Stirrings? Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. And so
Hmm.
did they see that as okay, she has a marketing plan. She's going to be talking
Yep.
about this on it with her listeners, as well
Hmm.
as being a guest
Hmm.
on podcasts. So they kind of see both of those.
When you start a podcast, you start speaking into a certain area. And
Hmm.
so my podcast is about spiritual formation, spiritual growth. My book is in a spiritual growth dimension. So they saw me already comfortable talking, being recorded. And they were like, okay, she has a voice. She's starting to be recognized in the spiritual formation um, growth area, and she's willing to be interviewed. So that's amazing. They're starting to put less emphasis on social media and more on these other tracks of platform audience connections. So they loved it. They loved it. They're 100% behind that. And we're just watching me go. Like, we love every idea you have. Let's go, and helped me. They also helped me with that. I have a publicist who did some pitching for me and has gotten me some interviews that way. And then I've just been pitching.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. Like what you just said, like you have, you starting your podcast and it was a niche podcast. It's not just a general come learn about the Bible or come, learn
Hmm.
about having a better relationship with God. But it's really a specific lane, that you speak into and that's your background and experience. And I think that's so important because there is a lot out there, but we all have our own, takes on things. And I think that would be attractive to a publisher to know, okay, she's already out there talking about what this book is going to be about. So you're
Hmm.
already building this audience and getting people excited about it and getting known for it. And then, like you said, the more practice you have under your belt speaking behind a microphone, that it's so much more attractive, right, to the other podcasters that want you to come on and talk about this topic, as well as many others. So I love that because, yeah,
Hmm.
I know with social, I mean, it's all over the place, right? And I love just to get on there and connect with people, not necessarily think what kind of content am I going to post on there to grow. It's just more of a connection and
Hmm.
engagement standpoint. And I do think, like, I mean, I know Lori and I, we've both been around a while in this online world. And, there's been such a change of how it did used to be this like a number. You were just trying to get to a certain number. And I think that they've kind
Hmm.
of realized that number doesn't always translate to book buyers. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, the publishers
Hmm.
are always looking for what else are you doing? And like yours, they love, bring us the ideas. We'll get behind them, but you got to
Yes,
kind of prove you're
yes.
going to do it too. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, you did a beautiful job of that. Well, let's talk about because I know something really cool you've been doing on your podcast is a podcast series around the book
Yes,
topic. So,
yes.
and part two of that is having a co-host. So let's first talk about how you came
Hmm.
up with the idea of having a series to talk about your book. And were you ever worried? Like I think a lot of people get concerned about if I talk about it before the book comes out, then no one's going to want to buy the book. So I want you to talk a
Oh,
little bit about just how you kind of
yeah.
came about the series idea. And did you have any of those concerns?
Yeah, the series came about because as I was sharing about the concept of walking with a spiritual giant, which is a new practice of spiritual growth, people were wondering, like, what does this look like in flesh and blood? Like, okay, we kind of get the concept. So when I thought about how can I make this more real, and I already had a podcast, I already loved podcasting, and just the idea came to me of what if there was like a 12-week series, and you had talked about creating series specific for your genre, your topic, or your book. So that gave me the idea. And then I thought, what if I can present the concept in episode 1 and 2? And then I start interviewing people who have walked with giants because I've had groups of people walking with giants. And the place where I got trained in this practice has been teaching people to walk with giants for like 20 years. So I had a resource of a lot of people that maybe could be interviewed. Plus, I had testimonials in my book from people who had walked with giants, so I could call on some of them who I know had powerful experiences with giants. So I did a couple with, we'll talk about the co-host. We did a couple episodes to present the concept, and then we presented 8 or 9 episodes interviewing one person per episode who had walked with a giant, what that looked like in their life, and what were the benefits. So all of a sudden, people that were hearing about it, now we're hearing live people describe what it was, how it worked, how they chose the materials, how they chose their giant, and people just started getting so excited about it. So it was super fun. And then at the end, we wrapped it up with interviewing my publisher about why this practice was important. And then we went right into the launch date, and we talked about going into the launch, what was happening, and then how the launch actually went and what God was doing in me through that process, which ties into calling, which applies to everyone. And it turned into 14 episodes. We have this 14 episode resource. I didn't realize we were creating that. Like, it's a hub to point people back to when people are interested in learning about giants. A year from now, 5 years from now, whatever, walking with a giant, we've also got audio content to share with them along with the book. So
Yeah.
amazing.
I love that so much. And just being able to have, like, you already knew certain people that could come in and talk about this content. And it is very unique. And, it's a good lesson for us all, no matter what books we're writing about, is having another voice to speak into it, because we get so worn out, right? We're just trying to share it in our own way from our own experience. But yet there's so many people out there that can benefit from it, but their experience may not look the same. And so having people come on, like you said, you have professionals and other people that have walked through this in their lives. And it could be the same with just everyday people, like you have your readers and they could come on and talk about it. And I think that's what's so cool, is just open up your podcast to other people. And I don't know if you've even gotten this far down guesting. We may have to just do like a total separate conversation and get your input on guesting. But I was thinking, one thing I think is so important with having your own podcast is, like, we could probably just have a whole other episode on just the time factor. Like, everybody's like, I want to do it because of the time, right? And we can talk about that. But I think, like, just when you go out and start pitching yourself, when you see it like as a collaboration, so that you're asking to get in front of somebody else's audience, but you're really, you're trying to connect with them and nurture them, and hopefully they become a part of your own audience. But I think being able to have your own podcast to then invite them onto, the other person, and having that reciprocal, I just think the possibilities are endless with you and the topics that you're talking about. So I just love that so much. Yeah. Podcast series are so much fun. Yeah. And so many different ways to do them. So let's talk about, because you did choose to do a co-host in your series. So how did you decide to go about that?
Yeah, that came about organically. There was a man in my beta group, my first Journey with a Giant groups that I led, who he's a pastor and he's also a writer. And he ended up being in one of my Journey with a Giant groups. And throughout his year walking with his giant, it was super powerful in his life. He ended up coming to me at the end of the year and wanting to lead a small group in his church of people walking with giants. And then that was the next year. And the following year, we were working together one-on-one while he was leading the first other person leading a Journey with a Giant group. So we were working one-on-one throughout that year. And then when that year was coming to a close, he felt a calling to continue to help me through my launch year with whatever I needed. And he had some speaking experience being a pastor. He had technology experience. So he said, I will do whatever you need, because he knew about the podcast series that I wanted to do. So he was willing to just be my tech piece and my editor. But what I saw inside myself as I thought about that series was, if you're familiar with Focus on the Family broadcast, I raised my kids with that. So Jim Daly and John Trent. John Trent is the co-host. He introduced Jim Daly, and then, John Trent interjects here and there, and then he closes it at the end. And I always saw Robert and me working like Focus on the Family. I think this podcast would be so great to have another voice, a male voice, a pastor, someone who's been through the program of Walking with a Giant, and he just has strengths of his own. But at the same time, I had people cautioning me like, hey, this could either go really well or it could go terrible. And so I knew there was a risk doing that. So I got some counsel from different people in the speaking, podcasting arena. And then I just sat back and I prayed about it. And I thought, this is how I see it happening. I need to go forth in faith that this is what the plan is supposed to be, expecting the best, not the worst. And what happened was we flowed so perfectly. I'd like, I'm biased,
Yeah, yeah.
we flowed incredibly together. And I knew from working with Robert through those few years ahead of time that he was somebody I was very comfortable with. And I needed someone as a new podcaster, as a new author. I needed someone that would not try to overcome me, or I needed someone who would let me lead, but would also interject. So he was just the perfect personality to do that. And so we went through this, and he was an idea. He brought ideas. He wasn't just an order taker. He actually had an interest in what we were doing and would bring ideas to me, and we shaped things together and ideas. And even a couple of the episodes that we did were his idea. And so it just multiplied what that podcast actually became. What we created was so powerful. And a big part of that was this collaboration, this co-host relationship. I don't know if that's going to continue. We finished it, and now we're both kind of taking a break, and he's got some other stuff he's working on. I'm working on stuff. We'll see if we continue that or not. But wow, I am so thankful that God provided him and that God gave me the confidence to go forward and how it went. I'm just in awe of that.
Yeah, I love that so much because you could go into it with like you're just bringing somebody extra into the conversation, but like you've kind of lined it all out and it's like, here, just, come in and speak on this piece. But just, yeah, you being open to whatever God provided there and just, you never
Mm-hmm.
knew what all he could bring to it. And I think that's another cool thing about hosting a podcast. Like, some people just start off with a co host and that's the way they go forever, right? And then, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's just so many ways to do it. Like you did, you brought in a co-host for this series and you could keep doing that. If you feel like you want to talk about something, like sometimes it's like, I want to talk about something, but I'm not comfortable with it or I don't know enough about it. So I'm going to bring in this other person to be a guest and talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. But you just never know. Like you could have a whole series with somebody and really dive deep into some different things and some different point of views. That would be such a
Yeah.
great thing for your listeners. Oh gosh. Well, that's so good, Lori. Well, hey, I want to wrap this up because I do want to have you back and talk all about guesting because you have been
Mm.
on
Mm-hmm.
so many podcasts, which I love seeing. When I see my podcast pop up in my player, I'm like, oh, there's Lori again being a guest. So I want to definitely talk to you about that in a part 2 conversation. We'll get together and get that done. But one last question I did have for you, just, looking back on your experience of working with your publisher, launching your book, having your own podcast, is there, any tip that just stands out in your mind that you would want to share with people if they're considering, should I start a podcast? If I want to attract a traditional publisher or even do self-publishing, just
Yeah.
any tip that comes to mind that you're like, I wish I would have known this back then.
Yeah, I wish I would have known that it is hard, it is time consuming, but if it's a spark of joy in you to do it, it's going to bring you joy and it's going to bring you energy, it's going to bring you new connections. So whatever the cost may be, the benefits are going to far outweigh it. Don't worry, just go forward. There's going to be more resources as you go. So yeah, just to go, if you've got the spark to do it, just go forward with joy,
Mhm.
without too much worry, because it's going to unfold. That was a big word for me and Robert as we did throughout when God brought him into the group, and then he led a group. And I'm used to a lot of control. And
Uh-huh.
like, I want to go in knowing exactly how this is going to pan out, and I'm going to plan it before we meet. I'm going to know everything we're going to talk about. Man, did God just keep bringing the word? Just watch it unfold. This isn't on your shoulders. Just watch it unfold. I'm doing something. So
Wow.
just
Yeah.
watch it. So that word unfold was so cool and so
Yeah.
important that we know it's not all on us. It's not all on us. God will just flow through us as we step
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh, that's such a great reminder. Unfold. I love that word. And such a great, yeah, just a great lesson for us all to remember, right? We can strive so hard for things, but sometimes we do just have to go, okay, it's in his hands. He's going to,
Mhm.
take our show to who needs to hear it, and bring the people to us that he needs us to, to read our books and listen to our shows. Well, this has been so good, Lori. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I'll be sure and put a link to your book, Journey with a Giant, and to your podcast in the show notes so
Mm.
everybody can connect with you and get encouraged and
Mhm.
check out your resources. That'll be
Yeah.
awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim, for having me. Keep doing your work because I'm depending on you to do my work. Okay.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I hope you were inspired by what Lori shared about growing her platform with a podcast and especially launching her book with a co-hosted series. The possibilities are endless with podcasting, and there's no one size fits all. Thank God, right? Also, I wanted to share a resource that Lori created, and it's the Transformational 10 quiz to uncover 10 spiritual mentors from history that are uniquely suited to guide you in this season of life. And I'll put the link in the show notes so you can check it out. And look forward to another episode with Lori as we talk about podcast guesting and what her experience has been like pitching herself as well as having her publisher pitch for her. Thanks for tuning in to Book Marketing Mania. And as always, I'll be there for you next episode to help you reach and serve your readers one podcast at a time. See you then.